Okay, now that we've gotten a bit more of a post clarity on what happened with the Persona 5 situation, right? So obviously Persona 5, Persona 4, Persona 3, all of these games are coming to Nintendo Switch, and that's awesome. We found that out at the recent Nintendo Direct Mini that many felt that was going to be trash, but actually ended up being fairly solid, especially because these RPGs and these games that people have wanted are finally coming over to Nintendo Switch, and there was a bunch of new third-party game announcements out there as well. We've got some release dates, we've got some big franchises like Dragon Quest, got some new stuff from Square Enix with Harvestella. I mean, it was pretty solid. Also, Nier Automata, that game's being brought over, but I think the biggest thing here that has been like a very huge talking point for people on the internet, and I put up a very interesting post on Twitter the other day about it, and that was Persona 5 Royal and why this game is only on PlayStation. Is there some type of secret PlayStation deal? What is going on with the game itself? Can the Switch do that? What's going on with this? SMT5 that? And ultimately, at the end of the day, all of this has been proven false when it comes to the reasons why. No shots to Gamatsu, but a lot of the readers there. But a lot of these things that were brought up about why Persona 5 Royal isn't on the Nintendo Switch has been proven false, or at least right now appears to be proven false. And the truth about this game and what happened is becoming more and more clear as we see not only what Sega has said, but also what Atlus is doing themselves with various different games, whether it includes the Switch or not, which we are going to talk about here. But before we get into anything, what's good everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell to get my videos, RPG content, streams, all of that first. Now let's go ahead and jump into this because like I said, there was a whirlwind of a post that I had with lots of comments and I wanted to go over it because I kind of hate to say once again, I told you so with some of these people, but I told you so because there was a lot of videos that I made me saying that Persona 5 Royal was going to come to Nintendo Switch and Persona the series was going to go multi-platform, and a lot of people didn't agree or didn't believe, but now we've got some stuff. We got to talk about it. Here were all the reasons why Persona 5 Royal wasn't going to come to Switch beforehand, and we're going to break down these ones here, and we're going to go over the truth when it comes down to it. So Switch isn't strong enough. This was something that I saw quite a bit people use, and people actually still use in my comment section on Twitter and various different places. People say, oh, well, Switch can't run this game, this, or Switch can't do this, that, or whatever the case is. Even though we've seen stuff like The Witcher, we've seen The Outer Worlds, we've seen obviously huge games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 coming out. I mean, it can run whatever. If a developer wants to make a game on it, they can make a game on it. And Persona 5 is a game that was based off of a PS3 game, and the engine that it runs on, that's Catherine as well, and that engine is also on the Nintendo Switch. So this whole thing about how Persona 5 Royal can't run on the platform was always nonsense, and obviously been proven wrong now that Persona 5 Royal is on the platform, or is coming to the platform this fall. Now the next thing up here is probably the one that gives the biggest amount of controversy, and that is imaginary PlayStation deal, or should I just say the PlayStation deal that people try to sit there and say that there was one. And look, I get it, like it was exclusive for quite a bit of time, and people felt that Sony was giving them money for whatever reason. People couldn't necessarily put their brains or wrap their brains around the fact that Atlus would have a game as highly rated and as good as Persona and not have some type of deal in place, considering that it's just been exclusive, right? It's just been exclusive for so long. But the more that we see with this whole supposed PlayStation deal, there isn't anything. There isn't any smoke. There is no smoke to show that there actually is some type of deal outside of some little comments that people have made here and there, but there isn't any financial reports. There isn't anything to show that Atlus took some type of bag or something from Sony. Maybe Persona has received, like, let's just say assisted marketing, or maybe it's received really good spots on the PSN store because it is exclusive and because it is a great game, but I don't think that there was any type of huge money transaction that said that it has to be exclusive for X, Y, or Z amounts of time. So I don't think so, because there's no smoke with that. There's just speculation and what people think. I've been asking people, well, where is the proof? Where is the actual proof or solid proof of this being a thing? And it's just not there. So that to me is imaginary at this point, you know? So next up, not enough memory. Obviously with the Nintendo Switch, you have about 32 gigabytes on there, which isn't even like you get all 32 because the OS has to use some, so you don't have as much memory, but SD cards are super cheap, so that's never been a problem. And then people talk about like RAM and all this type of stuff, like memory with that. It's like, okay, that's weird, that's stupid because it's on the PS3. You know, Persona 5 Royal is an upgraded version of it, but at the end of the day, the base is built off the PlayStation 3. So no, not really. Next reason why that Persona 5 Royal isn't on the Nintendo Switch pre the announcement was Persona 5 Strikers Japanese sales. This was something that was kind of like an ad hoc add-in. This was like the DLC pack to other things that we're going to talk about here. It's like, oh, well, yeah, Nintendo fans, you know, look at this. You had your opportunity to buy Persona 5 and you failed. So therefore, there's no way that it's going to do well or that it's going to come because they're looking at these sales and it's just the Japanese sales. It's not like the worldwide sales or it's not what Atlas has to say. And yes, the Japanese sales for Persona 5 Strikers wasn't as good as the PlayStation sales, but it was still good sales. And at the end of the day, Atlas came out and said, hey, look, with all of it multi-platform between PC via Steam, PlayStation, and also Switch, they sold over 1 million units. So you needed that Switch SKU because there still was thousands upon thousands of people who bought the game on the Nintendo Switch. You needed that to get to wherever you wanted to get to, which was over 1 million, or whatever their target was. And they were happy enough to announce that. So that was a weird thing. And it was just like the debut sales too. Like we don't know the overall sales. And obviously the game sold in the West too. It's not just Japan, but people tried to, you know, cherry pick and do that. So that was an interesting thing. Obviously silly type of comments going on here. Now, next up was Switch owners get SMT5. Now this was also another big and controversial one because obviously it would be great if SMT is on PlayStation, and I still don't know for the life of me, and I'll never understand this, why they did this, right, with SMT5. I mean, I'm not sure if there is a deal in place. I don't know right now, and it doesn't seem that way when it comes to Nintendo and Atlas with SMT5. I think maybe some preferred marketing, and I think maybe there's like some publishing that they did in certain parts or whatever the case is, but for the most part, I mean, like people were saying at the time, especially back when it was announced, because this was announced all the way back, it was the launch year for Persona 5 in the West. So at the time that they announced SMT5 was coming to Nintendo Switch, Persona 5 had not launched in the West, although we knew it was going to be a PlayStation exclusive because it launched in Japan the year prior at the end of the year in 2016. So people were saying, oh, well, they get this, we get this, or they tried to split it up in that type of way, which that might have been it, but it wasn't, I don't think, like a, okay, we're going to do this and there's some type of solid locked in place deal for these two, and that's what's happening. They just chose the platform for how they thought that they were going to do something, and since Atlas comes from such small roots, they just kept that belief, it seems, which we're going to expand upon in just a bit here with the truth when it comes down to it. So the next reason here, and that is Nintendo fans don't buy third-party games. I mean, this is something that's obviously followed Nintendo fans and people for like decades at this point, but I think that with the Nintendo Switch in particular, that narrative, especially with Japanese RPGs, and this reasoning for this is kind of old because now we've gotten multiple third-party Japanese RPGs that have done extremely well on Switch and kind of shut everyone up. Stuff like Octopath Traveler, Bravely Default 2, Monster Hunter Stories, Monster Hunter Rise, Dragon Quest 11. All of these games are multiple million sellers, and some of them are blockbuster sellers like Monster Hunter Rise, for example, and Dragon Quest 11. So we have multiple Japanese third-party games that just do absolutely phenomenal on the Nintendo Switch platform. So that reasoning has kind of faded a bit, or pretty much all throughout. But at the end of the day, it was still something that people like to bring up earlier in the life. And I always felt that it was weird because the Switch hadn't got an opportunity to really sell its games and to really do what it needed to do and kind of pick up the type of support that it needed to get. So people actually buying the system. And once we saw that, third-party games started to sell really well, especially the Japanese third-party games. So to me, that was always a weird reasoning and kind of based off maybe like the GameCube or something like that, or maybe some of the Wii games, third-party games that came out, but it wasn't based off of the hybrid nature of now that you're combining two platforms like a Wii U and 3DS, or like a GameCube and GBA, because if you combine that, then obviously third-party sales for Nintendo systems have been fantastic because there's usually multiple different versions of certain games. So to me, me, it was going to be something to where, yes, the Switch was going to be successful with Japanese games because it has that hybrid element in there that people do want to play. And the Switch was rapidly expanding in Japan, especially after Persona came out, because that was around the time that the Switch launched. So we saw exactly what was going down with the sales, and it didn't seem like it was going to slow down. So at the end of the day, those were all the reasons that we'd seen before in comment sections, heck, even some articles, people talking in videos, and they all ended up being either not correct or ended up just being something that was a non-factor at all in Persona 5 Royal coming over. And of course, we're talking about Persona 3 as well and Persona 4. These games, people would always assume that there was some type of deal, but at the end of the day, I don't think that there was. They wanted to put them on the system that they wanted to put it on, and that was that, because Atlus does come from small roots. Atlus does come from, okay, we have the budget. Atlus does not come from multi-platform development. And heck, Sega even said themselves, listen, like, we messed up when it comes to rebooting and re-releasing games, HD remasters, remakes. We messed up there. We're going to do a better job. And we also messed up with multi-platform stuff. We messed up on picking platforms because it's costing us money. This is not something that I'm just making up. This is something that Sega has been going through at their investors meetings and what they said themselves. So I think that at the end of the day, they realized, yes, we do have to invest in these extra ports, even if it is going to be Nintendo Switch or Xbox or whatever the case is. Yes, we have to cater more towards a multi-platform audience. Yes, we have to do these things in order to keep up with other companies that are making money hand over fist on the Nintendo Switch. So I think that at the end of the day, it was the most important thing that they got this going forward. And obviously all of these reasons were bunk. And the truth is there's millions of dollars that's on the table that Atlus obviously wants to grab and take, and Sega obviously wants to grab and take because they need it. They had a rough few years when it comes down to it. So they need that because they're what? Publicly traded. They have investors. So you need to make as much money as possible. Leaving money on the table for something as simple as this is just ridiculous in my opinion. So that's the truth when it comes to Persona 5, and the truth going forward when it comes to other games. I think that obviously there's some games that are missing stuff like Soul Hackers, but at the end of the day, Soul Hackers 2 is multi-platform. They're not just picking one platform and going with it. So I do think that that game can come over to Switch or like a Switch 2 or whatever at some point. So to me, Atlus clearly, and Sega clearly have a message that you can't just do what they've done before in the past unless you're going to get some type of fat bag from Sony or from Nintendo or from Microsoft or something like that, then okay. But no, you can't just randomly do it because you feel like it. And obviously we're seeing with some of these releases that that's not going to be the case. Well, at least not as much, but we'll see going forward in the future. But what are your thoughts when it comes to Persona 5 and what happened here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.